That night, I never imagined I would be thrown out into freezing cold, wearing only my nightgown by the son I raised. The fight started over money he owed me, and in a fit of rage, he yelled words I never thought I'd hear. "Go to a nursing home. I don't care if you freeze." My shivering breath became visible in the frigid air as panic surged through me. I was about to break the window in desperation when a neighbor, Linda Harper, appeared, whispering a secret that changed everything. Her brother was my son's boss, and help was within reach. Suddenly, what felt like betrayal turned into a moment of unexpected opportunity, and I realized I had the power to turn his cruelty against him. My name is Margaret Lawson. I am 53 years old. That evening began like any other, but the tension in the air felt heavier than usual. I had confronted my son, Daniel, about the money he owed me, a debt he had been avoiding for months. I tried to keep my voice calm, reasoning with him, explaining that this was about fairness and trust, not anger. But Daniel's face darkened, his jaw tight, and I felt the cold sting of betrayal. The son I had raised, once so kind and respectful, now stared at me with impatience and irritation. I realized quickly that this confrontation was going to spiral, and for the first time in years, I feared not just his anger, but the cruelty lurking behind it. The argument quickly escalated as Daniel's voice grew louder and sharper. Every attempt I made to explain myself was met with cutting sarcasm and dismissive gestures. His words stung more than any slap could, revealing a hidden cruelty I hadn't fully anticipated. I felt my chest tighten, anger and hurt mixing with disbelief. The home, once a sanctuary, now felt hostile, each corner echoing his rising frustration. Neighbors, perhaps hearing the shouting through the thin walls, would later say they sensed the tension like a storm brewing inside. I tried to maintain my composure, but the sheer intensity of his anger made me realize that he had crossed a boundary that should never have been crossed between a mother and her child. I continued to plead, my words calm yet firm, reminding Daniel of respect and the values I had instilled in him. But he refused to listen, interrupting me at every turn, dismissing my logic as weakness. The warmth of the house felt distant, replaced by a chilling atmosphere of hostility. Each explanation I offered only seemed to fuel his impatience, as if my attempts to communicate were insults to his ego. I struggled to find the right words, to reach the son I had once known, but realized slowly and painfully that reason alone could not pierce the armor of his anger. His heart, it seemed, had hardened against me, and I had to brace myself for what might come next. The shouting intensified, rattling windows and sending vibrations through the walls. I caught glimpses of neighbors peering through curtains, faces marked with concern and curiosity. The sound of Daniel's anger bouncing off the hallway walls made my blood run cold. I felt trapped, isolated in a place that should have been safe. Each passing second seemed to stretch endlessly, amplifying my fear and frustration. In that moment, I understood that the situation had grown beyond a simple argument. It had become a confrontation that threatened both my dignity and my safety. I knew that any misstep could escalate matters further. In a sudden fit of rage, Daniel stormed past me and yanked open the front door. The icy winter wind hit me like a slap, and I realized with horror that I was being thrown out wearing nothing but my nightgown. My teeth chattered violently, and my body shook uncontrollably as the cold seeped into my bones. Panic surged through me, and the thought of surviving the night outside filled me with dread. I considered every desperate option, even breaking a window to get back inside. But the shock of betrayal made it difficult to think clearly. I had never felt so powerless and abandoned in my own home. I huddled on the porch, shivering uncontrollably, wrapping my arms around myself to conserve warmth. My mind raced, trying to formulate a plan while grappling with humiliation and fear. Tears welled up, stinging my frozen cheeks, but beneath the panic, a flicker of determination began to grow. I could not let Daniel's cruelty define me. I scanned the neighborhood, looking for any sign of help, any friendly face, anything that could prevent this night from turning into disaster. Each breath I drew felt like ice, but I realized I had to survive this moment with courage and wit. Just as hopelessness threatened to overwhelm me, a gentle voice cut through the freezing night air. Linda Harper, our neighbor, emerged from her house, wrapped in a thick coat, concern etched across her face. She whispered urgently, telling me a secret that made my heart leap. Her brother was Daniel's boss, and he could ensure that Daniel would face consequences for his cruelty. Relief and hope surged through me, replacing some of the icy fear with a renewed sense of purpose. Suddenly, what seemed like complete abandonment transformed into an opportunity, an opening to turn the tables and reclaim control over a situation I had feared impossible. Linda Harper, our kind neighbor, noticed the frostbitten look on my face and ushered me inside her warm living room. Over steaming mugs of tea, she revealed a secret that made my heart skip a beat. Her brother, Mark Harper, was Daniel's direct boss at the company. My mind reeled. Could this connection actually give me a way to confront my son without risking further humiliation or danger? Linda's calm confidence reassured me, and for the first time that night, I felt the tiniest spark of hope. The idea that Daniel's arrogance could finally meet consequences through this unexpected connection thrilled me, and I began mentally preparing for a strategy I never imagined I would have at my disposal. As Linda spoke, explaining how Mark Harper could intervene if Daniel behaved unethically, a realization hit me. I had leverage I had never considered. Years of patience, careful financial records, and my reputation combined with this new connection could give me power I never thought possible. I felt a mix of disbelief and exhilaration. The very son who had thrown me out now unknowingly provided me the chance to turn the tables. A wave of determination surged through me, replacing the chill from the winter night. I knew that if I played my cards right, Daniel's arrogance and cruelty could be exposed fully, transforming my despair into opportunity. We discussed a careful plan to ensure my safety while also setting the stage for consequences. Linda promised to keep me sheltered for the night and advised that we proceed with caution. Every step had to be measured. Any misstep could tip Daniel off. I realized that patience would be my greatest weapon. Even as fear lingered, I began mapping out how to gather proof, how to approach Mark discreetly, and how to ensure that when the time came, the public confrontation would leave no doubt about Daniel's irresponsibility. The combination of strategy, timing, and evidence slowly transformed my panic into a controlled sense of anticipation. Margaret began gathering information quietly, careful not to alert Daniel or anyone else. I retrieved texts, emails, and documents that highlighted his irresponsible behavior and financial recklessness. Each piece of evidence became a thread in a web I was slowly weaving to ensure that the truth could not be denied. Linda guided me, suggesting which details would have the most impact if presented to Mark Harper or others in authority. Even small conversations overheard or casual observations became valuable insights. By the end of the night, I had collected enough information to plan a confrontation that would be undeniable, compelling, and perfectly timed to expose Daniel's greed and cruelty. While collecting evidence, I reflected on the past years, moments when Daniel had shirked responsibility, lied, or manipulated situations for his benefit. Each memory added context to the evidence I had gathered, strengthening the narrative I would present. The realization that patterns of behavior repeated themselves over time gave me clarity and confidence. It was no longer just about a single act of cruelty. It was about exposing a pattern that proved his character flaws in full. This reflection also fueled a sense of justice within me, turning anger into strategy and fear into a calculated plan for accountability and empowerment. Linda proved to be more than a neighbor. She became my guide and strategist. She advised how to communicate with Mark Harper discreetly, how to present evidence in a way that would be impossible to ignore, and how to protect myself from further harm. Her experience and insight gave me courage, helping me see that I was not alone and that a careful, methodical approach could shift the power dynamic completely. With her by my side, I felt both safety and empowerment, a rare combination that gave me confidence to act decisively when the time was right. As the night wore on, I pieced everything together in my mind, imagining the perfect moment to confront Daniel without risking humiliation or danger. The combination of gathered evidence, Linda's support, and Mark Harper's influence provided a path to turn his cruelty back on him. My heart pounded with anticipation as I realized that the trap I was setting could expose him completely, forcing him to face the consequences of his actions in a way that would leave no room for denial. The night ended with both hope and suspense. Tomorrow could be the day everything changed. Margaret began quietly gathering proof of her son Daniel's unethical behavior, making sure he remained unaware of her actions. She retrieved bank statements, unpaid bills, and messages that highlighted his irresponsibility, noting every instance where he had lied or manipulated situations to his advantage. Even small financial discrepancies and unpaid obligations became powerful evidence in her hands. Each piece she collected strengthened the narrative of a son who had repeatedly failed to respect boundaries and honor obligations. Margaret carefully cataloged every document and conversation, understanding that the more comprehensive her collection, the stronger her position would be in confronting Daniel. This meticulous process required patience and stealth, but the thought of finally exposing him fueled her determination, transforming her fear into strategic action and building the foundation for the confrontation she knew was inevitable. Once the documents and records were gathered, Margaret meticulously organized them into a coherent file, ready to be presented to witnesses or authorities if needed. Text messages, emails, and financial statements were arranged chronologically to tell a story of repeated neglect, deception, and irresponsibility. Each page she reviewed reminded her of Daniel's arrogance and the cruelty he had displayed that night. Margaret realized that a methodical approach would be far more powerful than emotional confrontation alone. Her careful preparation turned scattered facts into undeniable proof, and she felt a growing sense of control. The pieces of evidence began to form a clear picture of accountability that even Daniel himself could not deny, giving her confidence that justice could finally be served. Linda Harper's brother, Mark, provided critical insider information about Daniel's professional conduct and misconduct at work. Margaret listened carefully as he shared specific examples that corroborated her own evidence, confirming that Daniel's behavior extended beyond personal irresponsibility into ethical violations. Every detail Mark revealed gave her leverage she had never imagined having. Margaret realized that by combining her personal evidence with these professional insights, she could expose her son in a way that left no room for excuses. This insider perspective was the key to transforming her plan from a personal vindication into a strategic, public, and undeniable confrontation that would hold Daniel accountable on multiple levels. Margaret spent the evening planning a calculated confrontation that would maximize impact. She decided on the right timing, location, and witnesses, ensuring the scenario would leave Daniel unable to deflect blame. She considered every possible reaction he might have and prepared contingencies for each, from denial to panic. Margaret's mind worked like a strategist, carefully orchestrating the sequence of revelation so that the evidence and testimony would align perfectly. By the end of the night, she felt a surge of control and confidence, knowing that the confrontation would not only expose his wrongdoing, but also teach him a lesson about respect and accountability that he would never forget. Margaret contacted a few trusted friends and allies, discreetly explaining the situation and the plan she had developed. They agreed to support her, ensuring that she would not face Daniel's arrogance or manipulation alone. Every ally understood their role in observing, documenting, or corroborating evidence, providing additional weight to the impending confrontation. Margaret felt reassured knowing that she was surrounded by people who would act with discretion, fairness, and strategy. Their support bolstered her confidence and reinforced the belief that she was not just exposing her son for personal revenge, but delivering a message of justice and accountability that would resonate far beyond their household. As the evidence was compiled, the plan finalized, and allies briefed, Margaret felt a sense of calm determination unlike anything she had experienced in months. The fear and despair she had felt that winter night slowly transformed into confidence and purpose. Every step she had taken, every detail she had documented, and every person she had aligned with contributed to a growing certainty that Daniel's arrogance and cruelty would finally meet consequences. Margaret envisioned the moment when the evidence would be revealed and the shock, disbelief, and realization of accountability would unfold before him. Her fear had become strategic energy ready to fuel the final confrontation. Everything was set. Margaret's evidence was airtight, the allies were positioned, and Daniel remained unaware of the storm building around him. The timing, the location, and the witnesses were perfectly aligned to ensure maximum impact. As she reviewed the plan one last time, anticipation surged through her veins, mixed with a twinge of nervous excitement. Tonight's strategy could either completely unravel Daniel's arrogance or force him into desperate actions. The suspense was palpable, and Margaret understood that the next few hours could change everything. The perfect moment for her long-awaited confrontation was now within reach, and nothing could be left to chance. Margaret stepped into Daniel's office building, her heart pounding but her demeanor calm and purposeful. She had timed everything meticulously, ensuring that the moment would catch him completely off guard. Each step she took echoed determination, the weight of betrayal and injustice fueling her resolve. As she entered the bustling office, colleagues greeted her with polite curiosity, unaware of the drama about to unfold. Margaret's eyes locked on Daniel, who was momentarily distracted by work, oblivious to the storm approaching. The evidence she carried, meticulously organized and undeniable, was ready to expose his irresponsibility and cruelty. Every detail she had prepared, every witness she had aligned, would soon converge to deliver a lesson in accountability Daniel would never forget. Margaret calmly approached her son's immediate supervisor, Mark Harper, presenting a comprehensive file of documents, emails, and messages. She explained the situation clearly, highlighting Daniel's repeated irresponsibility and unethical behavior. Colleagues who had once admired or tolerated Daniel's arrogance now leaned in, shocked by the overwhelming proof of misconduct. Each document, each recorded conversation dismantled the facade Daniel had carefully maintained for years. Margaret's tone was firm but composed, projecting authority and calm power. She watched as his confident smirk faltered, replaced by unease, realizing that her meticulously collected evidence left no room for denial or excuses. The impact was immediate, and the office, once a neutral space, now felt like the stage for Daniel's public reckoning. As Margaret presented her case, several co-workers stepped forward to confirm the documented incidents. They shared observations of missed deadlines, unethical shortcuts, and manipulative behavior that Daniel had tried to conceal. Each confirmation strengthened the credibility of Margaret's evidence, turning whispers of suspicion into undeniable proof. Daniel's attempts to interrupt or justify himself were met with calm rebuttals from witnesses, further exposing his pattern of deceit. Margaret's careful planning paid off. The alignment of documentation and first-hand accounts created a compelling narrative that left little room for defense. The office atmosphere shifted from casual work chatter to stunned silence as everyone realized the true extent of Daniel's misconduct, and Margaret's control over the situation became unmistakably clear. Daniel's face drained of color as he attempted to respond, but his words stumbled over the weight of evidence and witness testimonies. Each excuse or denial only highlighted his dishonesty and irresponsibility. Margaret observed quietly, feeling a mix of satisfaction and vindication as his arrogance crumbled in real time. Colleagues exchanged shocked glances, some incredulous at the audacity of his deception, others impressed by Margaret's calm and methodical approach. The office, which had been neutral ground, now became a stage for Daniel's unraveling, and his previous confidence gave way to panic. Every failed attempt to explain reinforced Margaret's position and the inevitability of accountability. Gasps and murmurs swept through the office as the reality of Daniel's behavior sank in. Employees whispered about the audacity, the irresponsibility, and the repeated patterns of neglect that Margaret had uncovered. Even those who had been neutral or supportive of Daniel now reevaluated their perception of him. Margaret remained composed, observing the unfolding drama with a sense of calm triumph. She knew the combination of evidence, witness confirmations, and professional credibility would leave Daniel with no escape. The energy in the room shifted dramatically, creating a tense atmosphere where judgment and accountability were palpable. And Margaret's strategic planning ensured that every eye recognized the consequences of his cruelty and negligence. Linda's brother, Mark Harper, discreetly alerted the corporate authorities about the situation, ensuring that Daniel would face official consequences beyond mere embarrassment. Officers and HR representatives quietly arrived, reviewing Margaret's documentation and witness statements. Daniel's panic escalated as he realized that the situation had moved beyond interpersonal conflict into formal scrutiny. Every attempt to manipulate or charm his way out was futile. Margaret watched as the layers of protection Daniel thought he had disintegrated in front of her eyes. The room, once his domain, became a space where he faced the reality of accountability, leaving him powerless against the meticulous strategy she had orchestrated. Daniel's expression shifted from disbelief to desperation as he realized that every lie, every manipulation, and every attempt at arrogance had failed. Margaret's calm authority, the corroborating witnesses, and the irrefutable evidence had left him completely exposed. For the first time in years, he had no control over the narrative, no escape from judgment, and no shield against consequences. The office, the very environment where he had wielded power and superiority, became a stage for his ultimate reckoning. Margaret felt a surge of empowerment, knowing that the careful preparation, patience, and courage she had exercised had brought her to the precipice of a dramatic, life-altering victory. Don't miss the unbelievable ending. Hit subscribe now and stay with us to see how everything takes a shocking turn. Margaret realized that exposing Daniel at work was just the beginning. She had quietly built a business network over the past decade that even he had underestimated. With this leverage, she could regain control not only of her finances, but also of her dignity. She meticulously prepared presentations, contracts, and key documents that highlighted her achievements and the resources Daniel had tried to manipulate or sabotage. Every detail she planned was designed to give her a strategic advantage. Margaret's mind raced as she envisioned the moment when the power dynamic would finally shift. No longer the fearful, abandoned mother from the freezing night, she was now a woman who could turn years of betrayal into a decisive and empowering victory. The next morning, Margaret approached Daniel with a calm, commanding presence that left him momentarily speechless. She laid out two options: publicly apologize and collaborate under her clearly defined terms, or face the full exposure of his misdeeds to her network and corporate authorities. Her tone was firm but fair, conveying both authority and controlled patience. Daniel, stunned and off balance, realized for the first time that his mother held the upper hand. The weight of years of arrogance and cruelty pressed upon him as he understood that there was no escape from accountability. Margaret's confidence radiated, making the choice unmistakably clear: compliance or consequences. Daniel hesitated, his pride battling the reality of the situation. Finally, after moments of silence that seemed to stretch endlessly, he agreed reluctantly to follow Margaret's conditions. The relief he had once taken for granted now turned into apprehension. He understood the tables had turned entirely. Margaret remained composed, knowing that this agreement would enforce both accountability and transformation. She observed every flicker of emotion on his face, realizing that his acknowledgement of responsibility was more valuable than any public humiliation. In that moment, the son who had once thrown her out became a student of the very lessons he had ignored, and Margaret's strategic patience had achieved a decisive victory. Margaret immediately began implementing her plan, securing partnerships and contracts that Daniel had previously tried to block or exploit. Using her network, she reestablished financial independence and professional credibility, demonstrating the consequences of his past negligence. Every successful deal reinforced her authority and solidified her reputation as a capable and strategic leader. Daniel, now operating under her oversight, could only watch as the life he had taken for granted slipped into her control. Margaret's careful orchestration of the situation showed that empowerment was not just about revenge, but about reclaiming control and building a foundation for lasting success. Friends, neighbors, and colleagues observed Margaret's transformation with awe. She moved with a quiet confidence that combined grace, intellect, and decisiveness. No longer the shivering, abandoned mother, she now commanded respect and admiration. The very people who had once sympathized with her vulnerability now marveled at her strategic brilliance. Margaret's ability to turn betrayal into empowerment became a living lesson, inspiring those around her to reconsider their assumptions about resilience, strength, and leadership. The sight of her calm authority and tactical precision left a lasting impression on Daniel, who had underestimated the depth of his mother's resourcefulness. Margaret took her experience further by mentoring younger women in her network, teaching lessons on resilience, strategy, and empowerment. She shared her journey of betrayal and recovery, providing guidance on how to transform adversity into opportunity. Her story became a blueprint for navigating personal and professional challenges with intelligence and dignity. Daniel, forced to comply under her oversight, witnessed firsthand how her influence extended beyond him, touching lives in ways he had never imagined. Margaret's empowerment was now amplified, showing that true strength not only restores oneself, but also uplifts others. In the final moments of resolution, Daniel faced the consequences of years of arrogance and irresponsibility. Humbled and powerless, he had to answer to the very principles he had once ignored. Margaret, standing tall and confident, moved forward with renewed freedom, authority, and purpose. The betrayal and fear of that freezing night were now transformed into triumph and empowerment. She had turned cruelty into opportunity, weakness into strategy, and despair into a platform for lasting influence. Her life, her finances, and her dignity were fully reclaimed, and she knew that nothing, not even her own son's betrayal, could ever diminish the power she had earned through patience, courage, and intelligence.